Good evening. As some of you well know, there have not been a lot of videos being produced by Forgotten Forge Games in recent months. We have attempted to stem this by having a new restart with the Get On With It series, and tonight we're going to try something a little different with the Shooting Straight series. Rather than have a video of me talking to camera, we are instead going to see if we can make it more of a podcast type affair, where we have just a background and me talking. This serves two purposes. One, if we can do such a thing, then it means that when we have some live gameplay footage, we can do that at the same time, but we can also make other gameplay footage which doesn't have to be live and yet still has the audio track. All of us at Forgotten Forge Games are not that experienced in the way these things work, which is why we are trying new things to see what works for us and what doesn't. Everything that we do is on a very slight budget, so we are also trying to do this as cheaply and as cost effectively as we possibly can. This means that if this format works, it means that I can do many more videos, for which I am sure some people out there will be grateful, maybe not all, but it does mean that I can produce more of the work that I enjoy and share more of the experiences of and around games than would otherwise be the case if we always have to get four of us together to be able to produce the videos that we currently do. The reason it takes four of us is generally when I do a Shooting Straight, we also do what is called the Get On With It series, which means that we have three people, three people plus Magnus the Brony, talking about random questions pulled from a hat. Sometimes the questions all come from us, sometimes they have come from other people who wish to be involved with the programme but don't wish to appear on camera. And occasionally we do get people that wish to ask questions and have them answered on the show, although to be fair we haven't had many of those and we would really enjoy more. The reason why I fast-tracked this particular recording and why I am so keen to get this particular recording done is due to the controversy in recent days over Pillars of Eternity by Obsidian. To some, this is a storm in a teacup. To others, all it shows is that a major publisher has caved to a backlash of negative opinion by about 5 extremely vocal individuals. If you do not know what this controversy is, there was someone who kickstarted the game, and I believe this kickstarting donation was $500, so it wasn't a cheap reward by any stretch of the imagination, and he had a limerick posted on a gravestone allegedly about its occupant. Now, bearing in mind we are talking about a fictional world, a fictional character that doesn't exist, and this is supposed to be background lore, something a little bit funny, something a little bit different, and almost like an Easter egg type of thing. And basically it had a character that they said was alive and now is dead. He was meant to be a hero in bed, and that one night he mistakenly had sex with a man thinking it was a woman, and he was so aggrieved that he ran off crying and ran off a cliff and is now dead. That was the gist of the limerick, and the amount of bile and vitriol aimed at the developers because of this allegedly transphobic abuse has been astounding. Where is the transphobic abuse in that? It doesn't say how he came to mistake a man for a woman. For all we know, drawing our own conclusions, he got himself blind drunk and couldn't tell the difference. But for some reason this has been labelled as so offensive that they've had to take it out of the game, replace it with another limerick, and they have completely caved to outward pressure. I have a problem with this for two reasons, and I will generate the lesser of the two problems I have with this first, and that's namely the fact that someone had paid for his content to be in there. They alleged that they hadn't properly vetted it, whereas in fact it goes no further than some of the ribaldry and some of the other humour that you had in games on the Xbox original system in The Bard's Tale. This is the sort of thing that has been around in all kinds of other games, and is on a level with sort of some of the joshing and the jocularity, for want of a better word, of things like Escape from Monkey Island. Are we really saying that civilization, that our communities have now moved into a position where people can be so reactionary to something so minor? And the damnedest thing about it is that, yes, we are. It's been removed. BioWare have caved. Not BioWare, Obsidian have caved. They have caved. And that brings me to my second and greater point. We have been arguing now for quite some time that games are art. And this decision puts a hammer through the heart of that discussion, because it's been changed. Art is art. Once it's done with, it is supposed to remain as is. If we look at some of the world's greatest art installations, like the Formaldehyde Shark, like Tracey Emin's Unmade Bed, and all these other kinds of works that have been proper installations, they are meant to be unchanging. They are as they are for a specific reason. And art pushes boundaries. Without pushing boundaries, we do not have any creative growth. So what has happened is that we have a very vocal group of people that take great offence to something really quite trivial, that have now had a developer cave, patch a game so that it doesn't, the patch hasn't done anything other than remove this from the public gaze and replace it with something allegedly less offensive. And all that's done is show, well, if we find it offensive, we can change it. And that is a death knell, an absolute death knell for the gaming industry as art movement. It means that any game can be released, people can get up in arms about it, and oh no, there's a major backlash, we have to change it. Which for me is a massive, massive retrograde step in terms of legitimising what this work actually is about. To some people would say, what are you getting so worked up about? It's only a game. But when you're talking about the game industry, you're not just talking about the fact that people are playing a game. It is an interactive medium where stories and ideas are brought to fruition that can be experienced in a way by the player that you can't experience things through film or through books because of its very interactive nature. And I think it is quite telling that despite all the manufactured outrages that we have about violent video games and everything else, it is now rapidly becoming apparent over the last 30 years that with the explosion of violent video games, we are actually seeing a massive decrease on violence, particularly when you look at the FBI statistics in America of young people being involved in violent crime either as a victim or perpetrator, which has a knock-on effect in reducing the overall crime statistics, that we are becoming a more I hesitate to use the word gentle society, but violence is actually on a downward trend, and we can see that roughly from about 1994, from the statistics that I use from the FBI, you can see it roughly correlates with the launch of things like the PlayStation 1. As these things have come out and borne fruition, you can see a very definitive downward trend when it comes to violence. And if we see this, and we can see what effectively has happened, and we have all these moral outrages and all these moral panics about what effectively is a new medium, just like we did with rock and roll, just as we had with Penny Dreadful comics, the one that comic culture lost with the invention of the comic book code. You see that all these fears have been unmasked and found to be hollow, and yet we are in the 21st century and we are still having the same age-old debates from reactionary, conservative people. And these people have an agenda, and that agenda is to shut down things they do not agree with. Look at all of the controversy there was over Change the Cover hashtag, which showed Batgirl in the grip of the Joker, which none of us ever want to be in, and she's terrified. Huge backlash because she's on the verge of tears. Their change to the cover, what they wanted to see as a potential solution, to have her cutting, daggery looking eyes at the Joker and grimacing fiercely as if she were a man. She was not allowed to express real emotion. She had to be the hard-biting, ugliest sin, knock 'em down, drag 'em out fighter that Batman and everybody else is, who's a superhero. She was not allowed to be anything other than rough and tough. And that is where I think we do people a great disservice. If we only say that certain values are good and certain values are bad, then we alienate the bad virtues for both men and women. I cannot see it being a controversial cover if you had someone like Batman with his head uncovered, so he's no longer masked. We all know who's wearing the Batman costume, and he's got a gun to his head, and he has been beaten to the point where he is now broken, and he's on the verge, and he's allowed to show emotion. I can't think of any controversy there would be over him showing what to these people would be a feminine quality. And I do say to these people quite advisedly, because one of the main proponents of this kind of thing is Anita Sarkeesian, and it is in her own words, in her dissertation, that for the work that she did whilst at college, that all of the positive declarations that she could make were all about being tough, standing up, being stolid, being able to protect oneself, and all of the negative comments that she alluded to were things like being able to be comforting, being emotional, being able to empathise with other people. She all saw these as negatives. Now, when I see someone like her putting that kind of thing in framework, and then she goes on to do the things like feminism and the portrayal of women in video games and tropes thereof, I can only see a vast amount of projection, that she views these things within herself to be negatives, and therefore everybody else has to view them the same way. I obviously disagree, and I have vehemently disagreed with her over the past. Any of you who've seen my previous Shooting Straight videos can attest to the language at which I've used. I am not going to dwell any further on this subject, and instead I am going to move over to another thing that has been quite large in gaming circles, and that is know what? I've lost my train of thought. Oh well, let's see now. Where was I? We were talking about Anita Sarkeesian and the fact that we've had all these people complaining about Obsidian. There has also been in the news two other things that I wanted to discuss, and for the life of me, I can't remember what they are now. Again, this is part of the format for the show where I deliberately do not make notes and I deliberately do not have any notes to hand, because I believe that it stops me from being distracted, from having to look at paper. It stops background noise such as the rustling of paper or the movement of notes. As you've seen in the past, I have employed notes and they tended to distract somewhat from the overall message. So the fact that I have actually forgotten the other 2 points that I was actually going to bring up is part and parcel of what I'm trying to, well, one, train myself for, because at the moment my short-term memory is absolutely pants, for 2 reasons. One is lack of sleep, and 2 is the medication that I'm on. And this is really a form of brain training for me so that I can improve my memory. And indeed, this whole thing is an exercise in is a therapeutic exercise. One, it's occupational. It's something that I build up to prepare for and everything else, so that when I actually do the recording, there isn't just I've picked up the microphone and just gone blur all over the place. I have actually put thought into this, which is why it's now so galling that my notes are on the other side of the room and I can't reach them because of the wide headset that I'm using. But it's also because I have a social anxiety disorder and I don't like large groups of people. Now, funny thing to do with that is the fact that I can stand up on a stage or in front of hundreds of people and deliver this kind of thing, because there's a remove, there's the edge of the stage, the proscenium, you've got the walkway between the stage. In bigger arenas you have the orchestra pit, and the light itself becomes a sort of barrier and you can distance yourself from the crowd. So I can do those kinds of things, but in a normal setting I can't. And being able to do this kind of recording, doing the Shooting Straight series, the Get On With It series, these all break with that and make it a much more personal thing. So although I don't know whether or not one person will listen to this or 20,000, or see, that's how optimistic I am, no matter how few people listen to this or view this or whatever word that you wish to use to describe what it is that I'm doing, this is in some way breaking down that barrier and making it much more personal to try and overcome anxiety. Alongside things that have been going on with Obsidian, there have been numerous tweet issues on Twitter with people being doxed and or slandered, with people with absolutely no information. So I am careful where I upload this to. I share this on social media. I deliberately do this so that, again, it reaches a wider audience, and again, I may have 1 or 2 people watch this and they may not even have watched as far as this before they've turned it off, but that doesn't matter. The key to this is the fact that this is something that I've wanted to do, that I'm working with other people that have had similar things that they want to do, because the Get On With It side of things was actually something that Magnus the Brony wanted to do something similar, and we've changed the format ever so slightly and we've made it a reality. It's something we've been able to do on a shoestring budget. We are also looking to try and get other people into doing things so that we can help people achieve either ambitions or dreams of something they want to try out to see whether or not it's for them. And we have realised that there are lots of fake obstacles put in people's way. Some of them are harder to achieve than others, but where you have a collective of people with a collective will that can be steered, it's amazing what you can actually achieve. And this is something else that we're also uh, propagating, is the fact that if you can get 3 or 4 people with differing skills and differing levels of ability, you can actually make something which won't have the slick appearance of things that have got money behind them. But you don't have to be perfect first time out the gate. You don't have to be great in order to be start. But unless you start, you can't be great. Everybody has a failure or two in the back of their lives, and without being able to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and try, you never know what else you might achieve. This has gone far off topic from what I was originally intending, but again, this is part and parcel of what I wanted for this show, is to show and say that there is a train of thought that can be carried out even when mistakes are made and things are forgotten and things are fluffed, and the ability to be able to carry on. And due to the nature of my anxieties, this is something which is perfect for me if I allow myself to do things a certain way, knowing that I can't go back and change them later. All that remains to be done is to see if this plays as well on a friend's computer and a background added, and that is all the editing that will be done to this. And although it's not as long as I would have hoped that I'd been able to talk for another 20 minutes or so on the other issues. The fact that I can see on my marker that I've gone over 20 minutes means that I will now call an end to this episode, and hopefully means that I will be able to remember for the next episode other things that I was going to talk about. I hope that you have stayed with me for as long as this. I hope that you've enjoyed listening to me ramble on, and when I publish this, if you have any ideas on things that you would like to hear my thoughts about, please don't hesitate to either tweet me at Voice of the Forge, that's at Voice of the Forge, all one word, or to leave a comment on the video and I'll get back to you. All criticism in some way, shape or form is constructive. Anything that is obviously vile will be deleted, but I will try to keep the moderation as light as possible. And I thank you for your patience and hope that you have enjoyed this and look forward to hearing from me again. And with that, I shall say good night and thank you for listening.